This is the Outliers Edge podcast, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity by taking them to the edge of their comfort zone so that they can lead us to the edge of what's next. I'm your host, Niiamah Ashong. Let's do this. Let's jam. Hi, everyone. My name is Niiamah Ashong, and I am the founder of Outliers Edge, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity. It's cool because I get to be in this conversation here with one such leader. This is Tony Martignetti. And Tony, I'm just glad to be in conversation with you here. In a bit, I'm going to share why I am, but like it's good to be in space with you. It's good to be in connection with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And I'm so thrilled to be here. Always a pleasure to be in conversation with you.
You know, Tony, as you say that, one of the things that I really appreciate about you, and it took me a while actually to really integrate this within me. But it's like you have a way of looking at things that always brings an air of positivity to it, right? So like when you say it, like I actually believe you on this. Like it's you have a lightness to you that but at the same time there's a lot of depth that also comes along with it. And I got to just share with you, and this is like I can feel myself talking around this. I just want to just get right into it here with you. It's like, who are you to me? Tony, you are one of the people who has caused me to show up the way that I do on a regular basis now. You may not know this here, but getting your book, like the physical copy of your book, rewired something in my mind, right? So for all y'all here, Tony wrote a book. It's called Climbing the Right Mountain. I want to make sure I wasn't climbing the next one. So it's climbing the right mountain. And I got that book in my hand. And I felt the pages in my hand and I saw your face on the back, and I remember thinking to myself, he did it. Like he came up with an idea that he wanted to create, and then he did the work and he brought it out to life. And he's a published author because he chose to. And by that to me is like the damnedest thing. I'm just like, guy had an idea and he just brought it to life, and I know that you have the virtual campfire podcast, and I know that was an idea. I know there's different things you do, but we've had many memories, we've had many moments together. But I will say, in terms of the thing that keeps impacting me on a regular basis was that book. And it was the first time I wanted to create a book. The first time I'm like, oh, wait a minute, there's something here. And if I'm bold enough to simply make a choice and follow through, then that can exist and people can get it. And not everyone's able to do that for me. Not everyone's able to bring that into my existence. And as a result, I got connected with different people on my team. We started rethinking about how it is that I show up in the business. We started thinking about putting me in places where my zone of genius flowed, so that the book is not going to be written by me, but it will be authored by me, so on and so forth. But it's been just a really big shining light for me, and I'm honored and privileged and excited to be in space with you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for bringing what you bring to the table.
Well, it fills my heart, honestly, to hear you say that, because I think there's a lot of inspiration that comes from the people around me too. And, one of the things that I feel when I hear you say that is the sense of there's a lot of fear that goes into starting things. But once you overcome that first step, it starts to put you in the trajectory of creating that thing. And the limiting beliefs that I had of oh, who am I to do all this? Who am I to do that? Or, and then you just doing it, the actions that it took. And then, before you know it, it just happens. So I know that there's a lot of people out there who, hold themselves back because they think, I can't, there's no way. And then they do it. And then they say, wow, I did that.
Nice.
It feels good.
It does feel good. And what also feels good for me, Tony, is for us to just have this conversation between us. Whoever gets if they get anything that they get from it, great. The way I like to look at it is we're not even going to try and be helpful. Instead, because that's the thing. I've spent a lot of time with you. I know that being in space with you, you provoke my thinking, right? Mm. You also provoke my nervous system. Even some sometimes good things can feel how do I say it? I just feel a whole range of emotions with you, right? It's not just oh, everything's great. It's oh, what is Tony doing? And then it's Oh, that is definitely more about me than Tony. What is that? Like, what is it that I'm
Mm.
looking for? What is that? So I would love for this space to be that kind of a conversation with you, because I've only ever grown in when I'm in space with you from there. And I trust. Like, while this is called a podcast, I use this as resources in so many different ways. I trust that this message will keep being put in people's, like, in front of people at
Yeah.
exactly the right time when they need it. And it will be the thing that you and I think have absolutely no meaning that will be like the most important, you know?
Yeah.
Um, let's do this. I actually have a question on that in just a bit, but let's do this. I shared who you are to me in this moment, who you are to me in this moment. I'm really curious, like, about how you would, like, what you willing to share about yourself. Like, yeah, this
Mhm.
would personally, professionally, just bring in whatever you'd like to today.
Well, I love that because there's something about that which I don't want to give the typical like introduction of who I am.
Please
Because
don't,
the
like,
invite is
surprise
there.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, this leans a little bit to what you said earlier in the sense of like, the positivity that I bring to, everything I do. And it's not something that's fake, it's real. And I often say that I'm a grounded optimist. I'm a curious adventurer. I'm someone who just is so innately curious about things, sometimes to a fault, that I just want to know as much as I can about so many things. And again, the fault comes in when I trying to spread myself too thin to explore too many options at once. And the work I do is about really helping, leaders, both rising leaders and accomplished leaders, and their teams who want to, lead with purpose, to feel more fulfilled in their lives and in their work. I mean, there's a sense that like a lot of people who are in their work, they're feeling at some point like they've lost their flavor. It's lost the color in the work that they do, and they have to bring it back. And so I help them to reconnect with that. And I think we'll get into this a bit more as we move along, but there's a sense that like sometimes our lives, we go along, the things we really enjoy, it loses meaning after a while. So we just need to reconnect to it. So that's what I do. I help people to reconnect with what's important to them, to reignite that spark in them, and get them thinking about what they want going forward.
This is awesome. So let's play a little bit here, Tony. Like, um, ultimately here, one of the reasons I asked you to come and join me in the conversation is because you're someone who provokes my thinking, right? You connect me to different things, and like, you're not lying in your own realm. Like, you're making things happen out in the world. And so as I said to you before here, I'm still trying to figure out like where the juice of this kind of podcast format conversation goes. Like, and it's like one of the most powerful things I know is coaching. And I'm like, if I'm not coaching on a podcast, like, how do we keep power in the
Yeah.
room, and make it such that like it just keeps growing. So I'm going to start off here and play this game a little bit differently. I'd love for us to be in as much as possible to share some different stories, to let our curiosities flow. Let's make it into a conversation as much as we can throughout it. And I'm
Yeah.
going to start off though with this question that's on my mind. Before we started, I asked you to pick a number. You said 35, and this is what I had with that. Tony, uh, tell me about the most surprising conversation you've ever had.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, I live in the world of interesting conversations. So I think, that
It's a
question.
different word though, right? So
Yes.
interesting, like you meet an interesting person and they have an interesting conversation. I wouldn't be surprised by that,
Yeah.
right? So like, I am actually
What's
really curious
surprising?
about like the surprise and element of it. Like what's a conversation that you just like you just really weren't expecting?
Mm, yeah. Well, I'm going to share something that goes pretty far back. It goes back to a time when I wasn't as enlightened as I am today,
Yeah.
and I think it was because of these conversations that they really changed the game for me. Um, I used to have a colleague in my prior life that um, she and I just didn't get along. We just constantly had a lot of friction. Um, I was constantly feeling like I was at odds with her. We're competing for the same work. And because of that, I mean, I wanted to get along with her, but it felt like we were just never going to see eye to eye. And we never really made an effort to come together. It was always a sense of like, okay, you stay in your lane, I stay in my lane. A few years go by, I left the company and I moved on to my world of coaching, and I finally circled back and connected with her and started having conversations that were very different, because I started to see that like the way I was showing up for her was not appropriate. And so I wanted to kind of make amends. And when I had that conversation with her, the conversation went a bit like this. I thought I was the one who was causing the problems, or that it was my fault per se that was, causing this issue. And she was just as challenged by, intimidated, challenged by me as I was intimidated and challenged by her. And by us having this conversation and being open and seeing that we both had that problem, and putting it on the table, I felt like, wow, I'm so surprised that you felt that way about me, because I didn't want you to feel that way. And it's surprising to me, because we always live in our own world. Our reality is created just in our heads. And now I think differently about all the people who I've maybe had difficult conversations with. And I say, what else is possible? What else could I have done to change the tide? I mean, you can't go back and change the world, but you can at least go back and say, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm not going to show up that way any longer. Yeah. I'm going to be expansive, not restrictive.
I got thank you for going into bringing this one up here. The way I'm going to choose to play this is just like, there were some things that were popping off for me as you were talking.
Yeah.
You said like you were surprised that she felt that way, because like it's the way you didn't want her to think of you that way, right? Yeah. Can I ask, was this kind of like in the back of your head, you didn't want her to think that way, or you actively were making decisions because you didn't want her to feel that way?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think ultimately I was actively trying to make sure that she wouldn't feel that way, because I would maybe going out of my way and overdoing it so that she wouldn't feel that way. And by doing so, I probably made it worse.
That's like I wanted to see here, because I've experienced that so much. Yeah. I've experienced that so much. And I think about us here as outliers in the space where like there's something that I don't want to make it about anything more than just the two of us. So maybe we take that in. And in this case, I'll make it about me. I have experienced times where I want, basically, I've been like, in my effort to make sure I don't cause a problem, I am actually causing the same problem that I'm actively avoiding. I experience this the most right now with the feeling of loneliness, right? So in my attempt to not feel lonely and to not make other people feel lonely, I have a way of like showing up that can be present, that can be physically present, but not mentally present. I have a way of showing up that could be virtually present, but I'm not physically, like I'm not there. So like, if you look at me on social media, there's a lot of things going on with me there, but I'm like, I don't live on social media. Like you can like and you can comment, and I love to see it and things like that. But like, I'm more likely to give you an hour of my time to deeply coach you than to respond back, great! Exclamation point, or even with an emoji on social media, right? And I think I've been recognizing that like I don't want to be lonely, and yet there's things that I do that just like keep creating my own sense of loneliness. And I'll be kind of curious what that pops up for you.
Oh, so many things that I love that you bring this up, because this is so real. And I would have to say that I'm feeling the same things. It's like the thing we most want, we push away. And I don't know why that is. We are so, I shouldn't say we, I am starving for deep connection. It's like the one thing that I say that I'm really passionate about, or I should say one thing, I'm passionate about like deep connection and really understanding people deeply. but then you don't make the effort to get out there and do that. And you can't get there on virtual all the time. I mean, granted, this conversation I always find very deep and meaningful, but I would say that on the norm, we're not spending the time or the effort virtually to get deep.
Oh,
So
let's do ourselves a favor in this conversation, because I think we both would like that. Let's give ourselves that space to get there. And there's something in what you said that like kind of came up for me when you're talking about you really want deep connection, because I feel you on that. I can actually feel like some tears coming behind my back. Loneliness is my number one fear. Being alone is my number one fear. And so it's just really frustrating to say like I actively don't want this, and yet this is what I have the most of, or no. What's really frustrating is I actively don't want this, and yet I'm the one that's creating it. You know, that's the part that hurts. And so you actually did something right now that helped me see something in this space right now, which is earlier I was talking about we, like the royal we. And then I had to bring it down, not just to like you and me, but like I'm like, no, actually, if I really want to be like connected, if I really want to like feel this here, I cannot create levels of separation between the deep-seated feeling that I have and like who I'm projecting that feeling onto.
Yeah.
You know, and that was one of those things that really showed up. I'm like, that's how I create my loneliness. Like if I'm not in it and actually allow myself to feel what I'm feeling here, and then giving others a chance to like be in it, I've lost, and I'm on my own island.
Well, I love what you just said, that because there's something about what you just said, which really we often get into this place, and I just did it again. We often get into this place where we speak in this collective we, because as thought leaders, coaches, we're always thinking in that way.
Yeah.
But we have to own our place in this and really speak on our own behalf. And by doing so, we own that emotion of, I feel this way. I'm experiencing this. I'm the one who's expressing this, not the we of this. So and by doing so, we get to really be able to feel that emotion deeper.
So like the way I play is to actually play, right? So we had like 9 we's in that in that last sentence here. Even as we saw, you're like, I'm doing it. We had 9 we's in there. And I eventually started to take the we, not as the overall thing, but like actually you and I, literally, we are doing this. So let's bring ourselves to this space here. Are you down to play a game with me?
Sure, absolutely, always.
Okay. So for the rest of this conversation, let's keep the conversation in first person and play from that place. And that's like, and see where that takes us, as a result of that. Are you good with that?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So you had this moment. What was interesting to me when you were talking about the colleague there, and like how y'all were like button heads and so on and so forth. The one thing that struck me was when you talked about you were surprised that she felt that way because you were actively not trying to create that, and as these things happen, actively we're creating it. The other thing that struck me was like this feeling of a cooperation and rivalry. Like I'm like I wonder, when I say that, what comes to your mind?
Yeah, no, I think it's exactly it. I like how you say cooperation, because it's like you think that you're doing the right thing, but you're doing the wrong thing in the process of doing that. And it's weird how we get in this place that I got in that place of really doing that.
Yeah, it's so interesting for me right now. Just so you know, Tony, like I have a very different question for you when you change it to I. Like when you said we, I was like, oh, it's a statement. It cannot be touched. It is just a principle that is being put in here.
Yeah.
And then when you took it and you said like, when I got to that place, then all of a sudden I got curious. I was like, oh, like, so what is it that like got you to that place? Right. Like, it was just like, I'm catching this in real time, but it did fundamentally change the thought that was there. What one was kind of like, oh, it just is. And the other one brought me in here. So, I don't want to go back and past the moments past, but like what
Yeah.
I felt like I needed to bring in that moment was like,
Yeah.
hey, this is the real time impact of this here. Because I see it and I experience it where we were talking earlier about like people coming onto podcast conversations. I'm like, I have no problem getting a conversation with people. But like,
Mm.
I was like, people are coming in and they're bringing a persona. I think like that element of, I'm like, I just want to get to know you, but I'm hearing about your
Yeah.
product. I'm hearing about a story that you've told 75 times, that you've pitched all, like, there's no you in this experience. And
Yeah.
that's such like, I'm like, just send me a video and like, or send me the link to the 6 other times you talked about this. Like, I'm out, you know? How do you keep things fresh? How do you keep things like real in your experience? Because I know you speak to a lot of people. You've had some
Yeah.
really like, yeah, like how do you keep things fresh in your world?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really keen on is, first of all, finding new connections in different parts of my world. As you know, as I said earlier, I'm curious, so I'm always trying to make connections into different things, whether it be the arts or a new book that I'm reading and what sparks my interest as of late. And I try to bring that into some of the stories and things that I talk about. But I also want to make sure I'm working off of what other people's stories are. There's a yes and quality to the conversations that I'm having. I never want to make it like, oh, okay, whatever you said, I'm just going to tell my story. I try to make it a build that we're working from. You and I have talked about this briefly a while back about like, I am a fan of music, and I think that there's a sense that if you've got a good conversation, it's like creating a jazz ensemble. You bring together these beats, like someone lays down a track, and then you're working off of that and say, I like what you're throwing down. Let me work off that. Let me see what I can build from there. Because we are co-creating. We're not just putting something on top of what's already in existence. You're just continuing to see what happens. Like, you just put something out there that just never existed before. And I'm going to lay something on top of that who knows where it's going to come from, but it's new. It's going to come from out of nowhere.
I want to keep this up, going up a little bit. Like, when you are in co-creation with others, like, what is the instrument that you tend to play the most? Like, what's the thing that you bring?
Yes.
Or that you tend, yeah. What is that?
Yeah. And so if I really were going to think about an instrument, and because I'm going to take this quite literally,
okay,
I'm going to think about this as an obnoxious as the sound would be, is the accordion. Okay. Because there's a sense of wanting to like take it and just move it out, stretch it to as far as like you can, and then bring it back in. And that expansion and contraction. And I wish that the sound of an accordion would actually be a little more melodic.
Yeah.
But I love that. That would be the instrument for me, because I feel like that's what the conversation should be. At some point, you want to take people out as far as they can stretch themselves into exploring the outer edges of their beliefs and their possibilities. But then once they got to those edges, you want to bring them back in and say, okay, now that you've looked out there, what are the things that like really come back to the ground for you? The things that you think you really could take action on? Because I don't want you to just dream. I want you to dream, and I want you to do.
Yeah. Okay. Now I got to ask you this question. So, firstly, I can feel myself in here. I'm like, no, there are like ways to play the accordion melodically. I'm just not skilled at it, but like there are ways to make that come to life. You talked earlier about being a grounded optimist, right? And when I hear you talk about the accordion, and it's like, let's take it to the edge and then bring it back in. And I don't want you to just dream here. It feels to me like very much in the same world as grounded optimist, right? Where it's like because I'm an optimist myself, so I can see how a lot of people honestly just dismiss me, right? I'll be dismissed and they'll be like, well, that's a dream. Here on earth, like, I have bills to pay, I have rent to do, my kids need this here. Like, I can't possibly take on this thing. I can't possibly go out to, fly over and like, do what you're doing. I would love to, but I can't. And so I would love to spend a little bit of time like in this world of the grounded optimist. I want to get to the places of like how it's empowered you and so on and so forth. But I want to actually start on the other side first. And like when I feel you say that, from my own personal experience, that to me comes from like a place of uh, I feel like there's like, I'll just say like some kind of like a pain in there of like being something where like where you have to make that your moniker. It's not that you're grounded. I don't feel like you're grounded and you're like, oh, but don't worry, I'm an optimist. I feel like you're an optimist and you're like, but don't worry, I'm grounded. And I'd love to see if there's anything you can speak to about that in your experience. If there's a story that like speaks to something there, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I chose those words, it's because there's a couple things going on there.
Yeah.
Being a grounded optimist to me has a couple things going on. First of all, I've been told on countless occasions, and I've come to realize that there's something about the way I show up for people that is about being grounded and having this sense of energy that gets people calm, connected to their foundation, feeling like there's a sense of safety and being okay with being able to slow down and look at their lives from a different angle. So that groundedness is where I start with. And then the optimism is where you start to get people thinking okay, well, I'm on this level, I got my feet on the ground, but how do I dream? And how do I get myself to see what's possible? An optimist is always thinking about like that possibility in the sky. Like if I look to the sky, what could possibly be up there? And that's what that's where that whole thing came from, is this feeling of like your feet in the ground, having that realness to it and feeling it, but feeling safe. But at the same time, reaching and stretching out to see what's out there and having hope for something new and exciting in the future. And I think that's where that whole sense of optimism came from.
Yeah, there's a thing that it's interesting as you're talking. I made a video once, and in it I said I'm not an optimist, I'm a realist. And when I hear
Yeah.
you talk right now, I feel that element of it. And the distinction for me was like, all right, there's pessimists who look at everything and they're like, it can't be done. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of people like you bring something in and the idea is like dead on arrival, you know? And then there's others that like that will come in and they come off as like an optimist and you're like, oh well, you're not seeing like your head's in the clouds, like everything's all good, but like it's not actually that. And I'll talk to people and they'll come out to me and they'll say like, well, I'm just a realist, Niiamah, and I realized X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And what has occurred to me as time has gone on is I'm like I was an actuary. Like my life revolved around probabilities, you know?
Yeah.
And so what I realized is I'm like, oh, wait, you're calling yourself a realist, but you're actually a pessimist. And here goes why. Because what you're doing is that you're overly discounting the probability of a positive event taking place, and you're overly inflating the probability of a negative event taking place. And so rather than saying I'm going to do the work of what is necessary to reach this optimal optimistic goal, it's it's going to be more probable in your mind that this is going to happen. I'm like, that's not actual reality. Like if you look at the actual stats of it all, there's a decent percentage of opportunity for this to take place as well. So realistically, I'm not even an optimist. I'm a realist. I recognize there's a chance that things can go wrong and a chance that things can go right. And I can actively create plans to increase my ability or to increase the probability that I will be in the things going right world. What are your thoughts on that?
You just tapped into exactly the sentiment behind this, which I think is so sweet, because this is exactly the whole reason why, we need optimists, we need hope, which is a word we haven't really been connecting to all of this. If you don't have that, it's hard for you to strive for the things that are going to move us in the right direction. So I everything you said just is spot on. And I'll just add, I always think about this quote, and I change it to my own liking. So just bear with me. Yeah. Is that, people often say that, success is where opportunity meets preparation. But I often say that success is where opportunity meets preparation and connections, your connections. And so I think the thing is that the optimists, they get prepared. And if they didn't have anything to prepare for, then they would, they'd be considered a pessimist or a realist. I guess if you would, be like thinking more negative, it's more the pessimist. But the idea is that they prepare themselves and they surround themselves with people who help them to ensure that the future they envision, the optimistic future they envision, becomes a reality.
Could you make that real by bringing in for you? So you are an
Sure.
optimist, you're a grounded optimist. How do you prepare yourself? And let's not even say how do you, I think take us to a moment, take us to a thing, take us to an experience that you've recently had where you have felt prepared coming into it along the way.
Gosh, my whole life is all about that.
Yep. And now just find one right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I mean, I'll think of it this way. Okay, there's I've been doing a lot of facilitations of workshops lately, right? And if you were to ask me a few years ago, like, hey, do you do workshops? I'd be like, I guess so. But I wouldn't feel that sense of confidence. The way that I prepared myself is I started to connect with other people who do workshops. I started to learn the trait with people who were skilled at doing this, like facilitating and, getting the mindset behind what does it take to really, get people to have that experience of really shifting and developing themselves and developing them through an experience. And so, first of all, learning the ropes with people who know what they're doing and doing it in a really, comfortable environment for me, and doing it repeatedly over time, prepared myself for this. And then having those connections to continue to support me as I go on this journey on my own. And now, I mean, I probably do at least 2 workshops a month on my own. And it's like, I feel so comfortable. But gosh, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, you're going to do a workshop? I'm like, no, this is something that wasn't in my lexicon. I wouldn't feel the confidence.
So. I love this. We're about to start wrapping up for today. But you said something when we first got on the call that has been playing in the back of my mind. You wrote a book called Climbing the Right Mountain. Yes. But for you, that's not just a hypothetical thing. It's not just so I would love for you, just bring that in here. Tell me about climbing the right mountain for you, in the real world.
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing this up because there was a lot of pain and suffering involved with this one.
Yeah. So I'm like, tell me more. Let me get my popcorn out. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when I wrote the book, I had already done a fair amount of climbing myself, and in fact, there's a few stories in there about some successful climbs and some not so successful climbs in my past. But someone had asked me, and they said, hey, what's the next climb? What's the next mountain you're going to climb? And I said to myself, well, I've always wanted to do Kilimanjaro. And so I just out and said it. This actually connects back to something you said earlier about me taking action. I just outright said it. And I said, it was actually Dory Clark. She asked me, and I said, Dory, I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro next year. And lo and behold, a year later, I'm sitting on top of, I'm sitting on the mountain of, Kilimanjaro in Tanzania and freezing my butt off, and I'm climbing the mountain. So it was really a great thing to accomplish. Definitely not an easy feat, but something that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, I do want to catch it. It is something you're really proud of. You were describing to me, in real terms, some of the things that made that difficult for you, even just the way, sleeping and things like that. I've never been on a mountain here, but I think it's for me, especially in the element of the grounded optimist. It's look, every step along the mountain, you're getting higher and higher and higher, but you need to be so grounded with that earth. Exactly. So there's something in it that takes it into you are that in so many different capacities. And I feel if we're able to talk through some of the challenges that you face, some of the things
Yeah.
like in climbing a mountain, it can only translate to the challenges we face when we're taking on our different projects. So tell me about some
Yeah.
of them.
Well, first of all, I'll share one thing that's kind of funny about when you're climbing in Tanzania. There's a Swahili word called pole pole, which is slow, slow, and that's the truth behind that, which I think you'll pick this up pretty quickly, is that you don't go fast when you're climbing a mountain. Every step is just one step at a time, and you want to take a very slow pace because the oxygen starts to get low. There's less oxygen at the higher altitude, and you're not going to be running up that mountain unless you're a trained hiker, a climber. And from that perspective, those people who are doing that, they're usually locals who've been doing this. They go up the mountain almost every other day. So, but that slow is fast, and that's how you get to the top. It really is important to be mindful of that. And the other parts of the challenge, it's cold at night. It's hot during the day. You're constantly having to readjust and adjust your what do I need for the next leg of this journey? Do I have all the gear? Do I have all the right mindset to go to that next part of this path? So there's a lot of things that you need to adjust yourself and have the right people around you. I had a great group of people with me. I'd never met them before I went on the climb, and they were all fantastic. They were truly people who encouraged you, supported you, and along the way, they made the climb enjoyable. So I think those are the things that I often think about along this path that made it all worthwhile. And have good gear, good hiking boots.
I love this. As you're talking this, like, I can see the parallels to like really taking on an incredible journey, both like going on like any kind of project, any kind of endeavor that's like worth taking, right? You talked about like helping leaders with purpose, like the purposefulness of this year. Like, what does your gear look like? Are you really actually prepared? And talked about the element of the altitude and the oxygen. And as you were talking, it was bringing this image in my mind of like how many times I have felt that I'm not moving fast enough, or how many times I've felt like, oh, like I'm not doing enough, I'm behind, so on and so forth. Hey, back in the day, I would move, all this would take place, and now only this is happening. And you just give me a new like frame to look at that here and be like, perhaps I'm in a place where there's high altitude right now, and I'm not one of the people who, I haven't been living on this mountain going up and down enough for me to be able to do this, like, and have it just like naturally be regulated. So like, congratulations. The oxygen's high. There's less oxygen up here because you're playing a much higher run than you've ever done. Slow is fast. Like this is just that time right now. I want to thank you for that, because that's the image I got in my mind as you were saying that.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, Tony, let's do this here. We're going to wrap up our conversation. I've had an absolute blast here with you. If someone's interested in continuing the conversation for any purpose at all, or deepening the connection with you, what's the best way that they can go about doing that?
Well, the best way is to reach out to me through my website, inspiredpurposecoach.com. You can find all types of fun stuff there. My leadership journey assessment, which is a great tool for you to find out where you are and where you want to go. And beyond that, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I usually hang out on social media.
Awesome. And then, well, I like to end our conversations with this. Tony, in this moment right now, you're full of wisdom, all right? And there'll be a time where like Tony will go on, and the future you might really need access to the wisdom that you have in this moment. What's one thing that you would love to like leave here, almost like a time capsule, leave in this moment here, that would really benefit, that you would like to leave for the future Tony?
Yeah. Gosh. Leave space for you to connect with yourself. Don't lose sight of who you are, because oftentimes we're externally focused. I am externally focused, and I need to make sure that I focus on myself and leave space, that connection with myself.
Awesome. Well, that's for you. Like,
Thank you.
Should there be a time that you need it? You've said it. You can always come back to it. All right. Awesome. Well, Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm glad that we played in this way here today. Thank you for climbing mountains, for grounding yourself in your optimism, and just for honestly just being in the real time exploration of what it means for us to be having our own deeper connection. I appreciate you. Be off in the world and keep doing the great things you're up to. All right.
Right back at you, my friend. Thank you.
We're just getting started. Take 10 seconds to think about your greatest insight from today's conversation. And if you're ready to go and bring this to a deeper, more applicable level for you, come and join us in an upcoming masterclass. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass to be coached live and to bring your aspirations, your goals, and your challenges and have them handled in real time. This is high flame, high impact, high transformation. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass and come experience your next level of leadership.